Hey everybody, this is Andy from Tennis Euphoria, and today I'm bringing you my review of the Yonex Ezone 98 Tour. Now it might be useful to have a quick look at the review I did of the 2020 Ezone 98 for context, but that was probably the most surprising review that I've done so far. If you don't want to watch that video, here's a very quick summary. Basically, I didn't really understand where the Ezone 98 sort of fitted into the Yonex line. I kind of got that the V-Core Pro was the control stick. I kind of got that the V-Core 98 is the spin stick. And then when it came to the Ezone, I was a little confused. I kind of understood the 100 because that made sense to me in terms of sort of power and spin. And I loved the DR of a few years back for great plush feel. But then I was really disappointed with the two versions ago of the Ezone. I felt the 98 didn't really know its place. But then this came along, the 2020 Ezone 98, and I really liked it. But the review basically said that power does kind of meet control, but I ended up adding some lead, which for me made it feel a little bit more like the DR and made it a really good stick. So now really exciting to have that in a ready-made package with the Ezone 98 Tour. So before I start, I haven't made a video for around about a month. Apologies for that, but there's been a reason. Ironically, we're probably heading back into lockdown in the UK soon, but I got to the point where I've been playing a fair bit. I've been testing a lot of rackets. I felt ready to play some competitions again, so I needed a period just to consolidate and settle on the racket for me. As watchers of the channel will know, I was looking to switch to an 1820. Control was increasingly being my main motivator behind a racket. So I had a month of testing the Ezone 98 Tour alongside a period of deciding which racket I was switch to. I've done that, made the switch, got a permanent racket now that I will use all the time. Very happy with it. If you want a video about that, what I picked, it is a racket that I've tested before. Drop a like to this video, and if I get a lot of likes on it, I'll make a video around the racket that I have switched to and will stick to permanently. But enough about that, and let's have a look at the Ezone 98 Tour. So I had two of them. One I strung up with head links, which worked really well for me in the 305 Ezone 98. The other, I went to get as close to the Nick Kyrgios experience and went with Yonex Poly in that. You can tell the difference with the red ink on there. I actually much preferred the head links again in the racket. But let's have a look at the specs. So looking at the specs, we have that 98 square inch head, the 16 by 19 string pattern, but again with that pattern that is closer in the middle, wider on the outside, a really nice 62 RA, and then we have a really healthy 315 unstrung gram weight and a 330 swing weight. So certainly in my wheelhouse, the sort of specs that I would look to, and also specs that I think will appeal to most advanced players. Round about the sort of specs that I took the 305 up to, give or take a few grams unstrung, so it'll be really interesting to see how it plays. And considering the tech, then of course there are similarities to the 305. You have the VDM mesh in the handle, so you have a super comfortable response. I do think the difference to the 305 based on first hit is, you know, this is rock solid at 315 unstrung. You really have stability, but you also have a really nice feel to this racket, quite a plush feel. It is reminiscent of that DR to me, and it is kind of what I was trying to create with regards to sort of stability and plow with the 305. So first impressions, you know, really positive. Analysing the tech a little bit more, so I do think that VDM mesh works sort of really well, and I guess in the context of, you know, lots of pros using silicone, lots of people using foam in handles, then it kind of makes sense to have something in the handle. I think that's great. It's kind of ready-made for advanced players who want to stick with something and use it knowing that it will be comfortable. You have, of course, the signature isometric head shape. And for me, what that isometric head shape gives you with Yonex rackets is a little bit more forgiveness. It kind of helps you out on the baseline if you have a weaker side. I think that sweet spot is enhanced with the isometric head shapes, and that's definitely the case with this too. Dare I say that maybe because of the weight in this racket, the sweet spot feels, you know, a little bit more defined than the 305. You've obviously got to be able to handle the weight and swing it effectively, but nevertheless I think that isometric head shape for me gives you the sort of feeling and forgiveness of playing with 100, but also it gives you the control that you'll get with a 98. And the more that I've tested rackets, the more I do feel that head sizes do affect control, and certainly for me, I don't like playing with anything above a 98 square inch head, because I feel it does minimize precision and control, which is ultimately the thing for me. So the string pattern, similar to that 305. I mean, if you're hitting in the sweet spot, it isn't a massively sort of wide 16 by 19 or spaced out 16 by 19. So you are getting good control, but you're also getting all of the spin potential, particularly if you're connecting towards the top of the racket, that you'll find in a lot of spin rackets. So easy power, good control, lots of spin effect from the racket. It does kind of deliver you lots of different characteristics. And for me, as sort of hits were going on, I was really enjoying it. It's got bags of stability, lots of plow, kind of ample plow really, but certainly you can pick your spots and you can play out aggressively as long as you're hitting with full swings and it doesn't particularly fly on you, so the power is controllable. I think ultimately, you know, as is often the case with Yonex, a lot of what they're claiming to be the case is broadly true, and I think that in the Yonex Ezone 98 overall, power does meet control. But in this racket, you've got ample weight and stability for that control to be really felt, and you've also got that really nice kind of plush feel that makes it a kind of power and spin orientated racket, but also a racket where you can play with touch and feel, a kind of all court player's racket with some modern characteristics around power and spin. So what's not to like? And I guess I was sort of expecting that, knowing that I'd liked the 305 and added weight to kind of make it up to this sort of spec. I suppose here are the considerations, however, if you're in the market for a 98 Tour. So first of all, I think you've got to be able to swing a 330 swing weight and handle a sort of heavier racket in today's terms. So you need to be relatively advanced, have pretty good footwork, good sort of power and stability and balance in your game, I think, to really maximize the effectiveness of the racket. In terms of consumer advice, I can't quite get my head around whether there are fundamental differences between this racket and the 305, aside from the weight, of course. You know, is it just the 305 a bit heavier? The test that I tried to give it was to take my 305 up to same sort of weight, and I must admit I couldn't really tell the difference in playability. Perhaps slightly sort of plusher feel with regards to the Tour when they were both at the same weight, and I was gravitating towards it, but I think that's probably because the weight is delivered by, you know, my shoddy lead jobs rather than the weight just being in there around the racket at manufacture point. So I'm not convinced that it's particularly different to the 305 aside from being heavier. But to be honest, that does make it very, very good. It makes it what I was certainly hoping it would be. I think the other clever thing about the Ezone 98 and particularly the Tour is that arguably this racket could appeal to a number of people. I think if you are a baseliner who is looking for power, spin, good depth, then absolutely this delivers for you. If you're an all-court player, however, I also think this delivers for you. It's got a nice feel, you can play nice touch drop shots, it's good at net, it gives you loads on serve, so you can almost make a case to compare this racket to a number of different rackets that fit into sort of different categories, and in that I think that's what makes it really, really good. I think it is the sort of racket that advanced players can really build their game around. I sort of fully expect that you'll see the Ezone 98 Tour, much more in professional ranks longer term. I can quite imagine that juniors and up and coming players will hit with it, love it. I do think it will take your kind of pure drive and pure aero users away from those rackets, because they will enjoy that little bit of extra touch, maybe that little bit of extra feel that they're going to get from these rackets, certainly more comfort from the Tour, without necessarily dropping all of the power and spin that ultimately those stiffer sticks are delivering. So a note on strings in the context of consumer advice. Now for me, I played, as I mentioned, with some Polytour Pro 16 gauge, trying to get sort of close to the Kyrios setup. I didn't really get on with that, I must admit. I don't think that's the best string. I wanted to keep yellow in it, so I just went with standard head links, 17 gauge, and that probably made quite a difference, but I got on much better with that, and I actually think that is a cost-effective string that works really well in this racket. But also do check out Yonex Polytour Strike. I tried that in the racket and thought that was fantastic. An expensive string, but it worked really, really well, and I've currently got this in the 305 that I added some weight to, and that is playing really, really well. But also another string that's come to my attention, which has actually become my string of choice in my racket of choice, was working really well in this Ezone Tour 2, and that is Babolat RPM Power. I believe that's used by Dominic Thiem now, and I have to say, better price point than RPM Blast, and I love that string. I think that works so well in so many rackets, so hope that's helpful too. So 2 thumbs up then. Yonex have done it again. The 2 rackets that I had were very, very closely matched in specs. One thing I love about Yonex, as I've mentioned before, is that you can generally go and buy 2 off the shelf and they will be closely matched. You won't have to customize too much. The Ezone Tour doesn't need any customization if you are an advanced player. Perfect weight, perfect balance point, comfortable, power, stability. Also though, great control, great touch and feel. A real player's racket in the modern world. It's not the racket for me. Certainly if I wanted a racket that was also going to deliver some power and a lot of spin generation, then it would be the racket that I would choose. But thanks for watching the video. Subscribe for more videos moving forward. I am kind of back now making videos after that month. I have just finishing reviewing the new Technofiber 305 RS. So new racket reviews coming more regularly, certainly every fortnight, hopefully weekly. Thanks for watching again. See you soon.